Hello and welcome to African Voices platform. My name is Chiwe Chihana. Today we have cultural pioneers from Sheffield and current leaders of the African Heritage Cultural Forum. I'm delighted to have with us the chair of the African Heritage Cultural Forum, Sonia Gayle, and also the deputy chair, Kaltum Rivers. Good afternoon and welcome to African Voices platform.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
You do splendid work, each one of you in Sheffield. I can't even begin from councillor to everything. But here we're talking about the African Heritage Cultural Forum. I wondered if one of you could just tell us, what is the African Heritage Cultural Forum?
What isn't the African Heritage Culture Forum?
Go on.
So, did you want to give the background as to our genesis?
You go ahead and I'll jump in. There's
So-
loads to jump in.
People always say, well, where did the forum come from and what was there before?
Yeah.
So the forum came into being in 2021. And actually just before that, of course, everybody remembers COVID and those really dark days. And Sheffield was one of the cities that actually looked at the disproportionate impact of COVID on certain communities, including the African heritage community, and set up a race equality commission to understand actually it's not just COVID. What COVID did, it kind of shone a light on so many inequalities in different communities. And to Sheffield City Council's credit, they set up the race equality commission to understand, well, what are the drivers of this? And obviously they looked at health and employment and crime, but they also looked at culture.
Right.
And as somebody who was born in Sheffield and then left in 1980, you know, returning in 2020, I noticed that the city seemed to have changed. I was looking, thinking, where are my communities? The place that I remembered growing up. My father was a steel worker.
Right.
And so where we lived was it was like the United Nations. So we had everybody living in that area, and then it was quite strange, and that I left in 1980, so to come back 40 years later,
It looked very different.
it looked very different.
Right.
And I thought, well, I know they're there because I see them in the church, but during the day, going into the shops, going to the cinema, going to the theatre,
But where do they
I didn't see
anchor?
them.
Yeah.
The music scene that was so vibrant when I was growing up, I didn't seem quite as vibrant, and I thought something isn't quite right. So as one of the commissioners, I was one of many commissioners, talking to the community, inviting their views, and some of the observations around culture was things like racial literacy, that lack of authentic voices, all, you know, every time our stories are told, they're being told by other people.
Yeah. Right.
And sometimes it's honest on what they're saying, but sometimes there are things missing, or every time that story is told, every voice it goes through, the story changes a little bit, and by the time it gets to the end, it's a very different story.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't even recognize
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
And I thought, listen, we can sit here and grumble and say it's not right. And also I think we were coming up to Black History Month, and people were saying, well, what's Sheffield doing? I said, well, what is the city doing? So having returned from London, which was very different, I was talking to the council and said, look, there's things that we can do. And when I started doing some research, I realised actually Sheffield is doing a lot, but you'd struggle to find it.
Yeah.
So I said, well, people aren't going to go and log on to all of these websites to see who's doing what. I said, we need to pull this together into a listing. So we spoke to the council, had a really good meeting with the council leader, and they said, look, we will support you with this. So with their support, we set up the African Heritage Culture Forum, we set up the website, and we started off with a view to shine a light on events that are taking place. We take no credit for the events, but we saw our role as shining a light,
How do you
being
see? How do
promoters,
people know about
bringing
them?
it to communities,
Yeah.
and then taking that a step further, which was getting tickets for the community. So anything that was on at the Lyceum that might be of interest, well, people might not know. They think, oh, it's not for me. We said, well, it is for you. And so we spoke to the CEO at Crucible Theatre, who said, the new CEO, yes, we can get you community tickets. And so there were people who'd lived in Sheffield all their lives, never set foot in the Crucible. Suddenly, they were able to go in there and they felt that they were welcome.
Right.
So it started off small steps, but we've really come on
Quite a
since
long
then.
way.
Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
yeah. And were you equally in that on that journey as well? Like you had been on the Race Equality Commission as well alongside Sonia. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, some of the evidence was, it was obvious there were gaps, there were, and remember, this is actually, we're doing this for the whole of our city.
Yeah.
We have generations that are growing up without knowing the African heritage, people who were part of the NHS, the Windrush generation. So all the educational aspects of it that we're missing, but also the fact that the African heritage stories in art, when in the evidence of Race Equality Commission evidence given to us, there was all these gaps, you know,
Right.
bringing people together. So I got involved by invitation, and it's not just the two of us. There's a whole group of steering group that came together, like-minded people with different, you know, diverse intersectional identities of age, gender, disability, but all African heritage. And when you have group of people with different lived experience and all wanting to make sure that the African heritage stories are told by us, and not just for us though, for our city, I came on board, and having the background of being a social scientist helps as well to kind of pinpoint some of those gaps and inequalities.
Brilliant. Yeah.
I think you're right to mention a point about Windrush and the schools, because in 2023 it was the 75th anniversary
of Windrush.
So these are elders are now looking, many of them have gone to the next stage of their journey, they're advanced in their years, and one of the things we said is if we don't capture these stories, they'll be lost forever. These were people who played such an important role in the history of Sheffield, who made Sheffield the steel city. You know, my father was a steel worker.
Yeah.
And then you look at our children, you go into any primary school, it's very mixed. Many of our children are mixed race.
Yes.
So this is part of their heritage, and the schools, of course, the curriculums are so full, so they don't have time to understand that story. But you know, children are smart, and they can see in the mirror
what they look like.
You know, what they look like, and where is the genesis of all of this? So I think we are providing a service, not just from a cultural perspective, but also education and supporting our educators to give them confidence to tell those stories and give children that reassurance that they don't have to hide that part of themselves. It's something that they can be proud of, they can celebrate it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could argue, if you go back far enough, we are all of African heritage as the birthplace of Homo sapiens. And that's a different story, but it's been a journey.
It's been a journey.
Yes.
It sounds like a very powerful journey. And when you talk about young people, I'm thinking a pedestal where my identity can be appreciated and seen and visibility. I wish I had more of that, I think, when I was younger. Now, I'm very fortunate that as African Voices Platform, we are part of the forum. I think it's a very opportune thing that you've done. But so far on this journey, what have been some of your biggest achievements that you can look back and say, you know what, 2021 to now, this is something we've really done.
You know, it's so hard because, you know, sometimes you stop and think about the impact, and we don't really feel it as much, but then somebody will come along and say something, and I think the impact that we've had, it's been quite small. I wouldn't say it's been an evolutionary jump. It's been small incremental steps. But somebody made the point that by shining a light on these events, what you're doing, you're giving people permission. It's like Sheffield, the door is open. Somebody said they've been trying to get a theatre production. It's called Russia Caribbean Journey.
Oh, yeah.
It was on at the Lyceum. And the production team are based in Birmingham. They said for 17 years they've been trying to get into the Lyceum. Not to show that show, but just to get in.
Just to get in and put something on, yeah.
Couldn't get in.
Wow.
Suddenly, and it may just have been fortuitous timing, but I think we gave organisations confidence that they could put these events on. And I think the point that we made is, this is not events for people of African heritage, it's about African heritage culture. For everybody
to participate and consume.
To participate in, but in the right way. So we're not making fun, we're not belittling, we're not trivialising. It's actually reminding people that this is part of Sheffield's history. If you go back to the 70s, and Sheffield, what we were known for, very pioneering politically aware. We were the first sanctuary city.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I was born in Sheffield, I said, I remember those days. So it was a reminder, this is not something new. We used to do this, and we didn't really make a big song and dance about it. It was just normal.
Mm-hmm.
So it was giving CEOs of these organisations the confidence to put these events on. And they said, is there an appetite for this? I said, trust me, it will be sold out.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these events are sold out, and to the extent now that we're now seeing artists putting Sheffield on their itinerary because they know it will be sold out.
It will be,
Whereas before they would bypass, they'd go to Manchester or Leeds, they're coming here.
Yeah.
And that's a success. So we got the Mobos.
Absolutely.
I'd like to think that we created the environment where Sheffield could suddenly be seen as a place where the Mobos would go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we at African Voices platform got our tickets through the African Heritage Cultural Forum, so you had something to do with some of that.
Well, we're shameless and we ask for tickets, and I will beg, borrow, I won't steal.
Also, with that, we had young people who have never thought that they would attend Mopo Awards and have seen it, and some of the young Somali young boys and girls who have seen the year before chunks representing, and Maya also representing both Somali but African heritage. And when they went and we got the tickets for them, and also through us and other places, they were amazed. You know, they never thought they would.
Really,
I remember giving tickets to two
the
young
Mobos,
girls. And
that's
thinking,
massive.
wow.
Like, seriously, we see that in London, we see it in other places, but here, that was
But it also
massive.
brought people to Sheffield who'd never been to the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I could hear people saying, I didn't realise Sheffield was so diverse. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not just about arts and culture, it's actually putting Sheffield on the map for all the right reasons. And if we are, you know, because we played a part as well in the city's new culture strategy and the Sheffield City goals. And so if the city is serious about becoming a destination, which I think we are already, and we're known for being the outdoor city. I mean, we sit a third of the cities in the Peak District,
Absolutely,
which is great. But the Peak District isn't just for certain people, it's for all of us to enjoy.
Yeah. How do we make it accessible?
Yeah.
Can I just add to the list of things I think that the achievements, when you're talking about theatre and stuff, I think also in sharing the listings, it's made it possible for others to see, actually, there's a Utopia Theatre that can do this, so I can access it. So in a way, like, it's all weaving all these things together and getting a platform. In fact, when we made a call out for radio programs, we featured in the African Heritage Culture Forum. I think to a degree, we probably got some of the applications through that, which is really brilliant. Yeah. Can each of you share a standout moment of success story from your individual time? So not necessarily the whole, but your individual times, like, oh, this was amazing because of the forum.
Do you want to go first?
I'm a mum of dual heritage children. So for me, to share and for them to be invited into platforms through African heritage is individually, very great. I've moved to Sheffield with one child, and I've got 3 other children. So all my children growing up in Sheffield, but you take it for granted when you grow up in London as a young person. So I grew up in London, and I've seen lots of African heritage culture in East London, in Northwest London, in North London. And when I came to Sheffield, I was expecting to be the same, but it kind of felt, where is everybody?
Yeah.
And so individually, my celebration is how much my children are actually very lucky to be part of Utopia Theatre, but also to be part of the African heritage activities, and also learning. Children they go to school with, they feel very proud to tell them, this is what the African heritage is. And they know about the Windrush because of me, because of us, and because of all of us being educators of our heritage. So I'm quite happy to kind of feel that children, young people like my children, are very lucky for us to be doing this, and kind of, which we never had. I think you and I didn't have this, did we?
No. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And you, Sonia, did you say a moment that's personal to you that says,
I think the two things are linked. So I would say the listings, even though on one level they seem quite simple, actually what it does, it weaves it all together, and it tells a story about the city of Sheffield, but a really positive story. But we have to go out and look for these events, so we have a process in place, and it's become really, really professional and a bit more slick. So whereas it was very labour intensive, now we've managed to lean the process, so it's a lot more efficient. And to the extent that Arts Council England were very complimentary, and were able to offer us some funding, so we could actually employ a part-time administrator to help us with the listings. And that's taken a lot of the strain off the trustees, because it is hard work.
It must be.
But today we have 35 events listed. Now remember, it's not Windrush, it's not Black History Month. These are the events currently taking place in Sheffield.
Yeah. Do either of you know how many, as of today or last week, how many people are on the list?
What do you mean in terms of our members?
Yeah, the members. Yeah.
So we have in excess of 400, which doesn't sound like a lot, and they're not.
It is a lot for Sheffield.
It's a lot for Sheffield, but they're not all from Sheffield.
Ah.
So this is the thing. So sometimes when students. So even when they have left the University of Sheffield or Hallam, or indeed Sheffield College, some of them they still return. So and it doesn't cost anything. So as long as you're 18, you can sign up. You don't need to be in the city. I mean, it's about the events. So in the same way that people sign up because they want to know what's on, places to go, things to do. And actually a lot of the really important information is in the forum bit, so you have to be a member to access that bit. But that's where we have all of the learning resources. So several schools, teachers have registered just so they can access the resources.
Actually, I will come back to that because I really want to get more into the school's engagement. But Kaltum, you opened your mouth. Should I go or did you want to say something? You nodded. I was wondering about, like that journey, just taking you a little bit back. I was thinking now, and I should have probably had a chat with you before, but I'm thinking now, like, there could have been so many things that would have come out of the Race Equality Commission. It could have been African health. It could have been African, that sort of. Why culture?
So I think we chose, and you're right, so there were 6 themes. So it wasn't, culture was one, sports and culture, health, inequalities, education, crime, employment. So these are all important areas.
They are,
and I think in our own way, we focused on culture because, not that because it was the easiest, because it wasn't the easiest, but I think through culture it provides the right environment. So if people can see it, if you see culture being celebrated, so now Black History Month, you see those banners around the town hall and in the Peace Gardens and leading down to the station. And I remember people taking pictures saying, look, they've got Black History Month. We never had that before. Windrush, we fly the Windrush flag above the town hall. And it might seem a small thing, but it's really important.
It's significant.
It's that affirmation that we matter. And that people of stature in the city are thinking of us. And that means a lot to a lot of people. So I think our influence there has been key. And then that for me provides a foundation for everything else. So because you're not starting from a blank sheet of paper. So it's about creating the right environment. And so it's, if you like, somebody used the gardening analogy, isn't it? It's preparing the soil where plants will grow. And I like to think that what the forum is doing is that we are the soil. So we're providing the optimum growing conditions.
I'm
creating.
I'm also looking at on the side of as an academic, activist, we're looking at where we have to embed everything into culture. So if we're researching with communities, which I am, we're making sure that things are decolonized, things are ethical, things are not harmful. So it would, looking at this would benefit many of people who are doing research with communities as well, where culture could be just a buzzword, but in reality for us, wherever we go in the diaspora, we take our culture with us, African heritage culture with us.
Yeah.
We don't shake it off. We don't like put in somebody's face, but we just want to make sure that things are equal for us. And also, the generations of South Yorkshire, especially Sheffield, children and young people growing up would be learning how to kind of include people in whatever they do. So this is kind of benefiting and looking at the culture being the soil, like you said.
Yeah.
We're putting the seeds for the generations to come as well, so they can actually, of all ethnicities and faiths, so they can actually then be comfortable instead of using just resources other people did. They'll have that knowledge to teach in the schools. So we're kind of to get into that anti-racist, you know, approaches that we've always been.
I mean, we never saw the forum as a social justice organisation, but in some respects, what we've tried to do is by saying, if a culture is respected, then that does have an impact in terms of how other people perceive you. And if they perceive you as somebody who matters, that you're of a culture that has value, then that in turn will influence their behaviours. When people think you're somehow less than, that's where you get all of this. That's where racism starts from. It starts from a place of fear, a place of ignorance. Culture is a great tool to educate people, to present communities in a positive light. And that's why we talk about it being the soil, the foundation from which good things can grow.
Yes.
We can't be everywhere, but you and I sit on so many different organisations, don't we?
But also with all the other outcomes of the Race Equality Commission, it helps with that as well. So if we're talking about health, public health would be looking at the culture of the communities, of African heritage communities, and knowing how mental health was COVID affected specific communities of African heritage. So knowing if we go through the culture, then we can apply it to many of these. So for example, the criminal justice system, we're looking at the culture of the community they're looking at. If we're providing that kind of resources and support, then they can tap into it.
Yeah, and from what just from hearing both of you speaking in my head, I'm just thinking, actually, it's one of the most foundational things that will enable conversations. It's less tense to do that. I think it's comfortable territory for people to come and engage in their curiosities as well. And so that's a moment for dialogue as well, isn't it? For whatever. I was wondering then, how do people? I can't remember. How do people become members of the Cultural Forum?
Very easy, very easy. You just go onto the website, put in your details, 18 and over, you sign up. Nice and easy. Doesn't cost a penny.
And that's a search on African Heritage Cultural Forum.
If you just type in African Heritage Culture Forum, we pop up with the first name. We didn't pay for that. So that's through popular demand. We just appear on those listings. I'm not going to say it begins with a G, but we appear.
You appear in those ones, okay. Yeah. So I think just so my producer doesn't kill me later on, just you will be seeing that website on here somewhere here. Yeah. And then so and then are there ambassadors for the forum? And after the application, is there an onboarding? How does it work after that?
So by being a member, it gives you access. Because you can access the listing, so you don't need to be a member. If you just want to see what's going on in Sheffield, you can go onto because the website is there. It's in the public domain. We have the events listed, and you can. It's hosted by Welcome to Sheffield, which is Sheffield City Council, and it appears in various other searches as well. So what we do is we shine a light on those events, but we have a dedicated link on our website, so you can just go in there. Anybody can access that, and they can see what's happening, and it's all collated for them. If you want to access demographic information about the city, so if you want to understand about the African heritage community in terms of numbers and statistics, we had a census, the recent census. If you want to understand what the demographics of the city are,
that's the place to go.
Then we have all of that information on the forum website, which is a closed section.
In the members area.
Yeah, but you don't pay for that, it's all there. Yeah. We have our educational, so we do a resources pack, learning resources for schools. We do one for Windrush and one for Black History Month, and it covers all the key stages, so primary, middle and secondary school.
Secondary school.
And that is shared with schools via Learn Sheffield.
Oh, good. So
Yes.
that's a good partner
So we
to
partner
have
with
as
Learn
well.
Sheffield.
Yeah.
And we're doing a poetry competition this year. So we've just been doing the judging, so I've got a few more grey hairs, but we've had some fabulous
Is that
stories.
schools that are doing the poetry
Schools.
competition?
Schools.
Right, okay.
We had hundreds of entries.
Oh, good.
And we've identified many winners, and we'll be presenting the winners with their winning certificates on the 28th of June. So we'll be having a civic event that's hosted by the Lord Mayor.
Okay,
And
yeah.
that will be taking place in June. So we'll invite some of our elders to attend that.
That's
And
beautiful.
they'll
What
get
sort
to
of
hear
poetry was it was it themed around
It was
anything?
themed around Windrush,
Oh, amazing.
Yes.
Right.
and the children were inspired.
So does the African Heritage Cultural Forum just keep within the borders of Sheffield, or does it go beyond that, and especially with the schools engagement?
So we are a registered charity, so our location is Sheffield. Obviously, people from wider South Yorkshire, again, they come into the city. So yes, we are based within the Sheffield area, and there may be opportunities to work with other organisations and extend into Barnsley and the wider South Yorkshire region. But at the moment, we are predominantly Sheffield based.
I imagine it's probably the only one in this region that's something like that, so I guess everybody would gravitate towards that.
Yes.
And would you have listings of things that are happening in Barnsley, Doncaster?
Not currently,
not
but
yet?
that's something that we are looking at actively.
Oh, right.
There is another organisation, they're still quite grassroots.
All right.
And so we are looking to link in with them. So what we don't want to do is to
Duplicate
is
or
to
conflate.
duplicate or
Yeah.
conflate.
Yeah.
What we try and do is to work with partners
You've got partners
based in
there.
those areas, and then we can support them. And not just African heritage, but you have the South Asian community as well. So a few people have looked at what we have done in this space to see, can we replicate it for our communities, and we work across with other organisations.
Yeah, and this is addressing the common problem of how do we not know what's happening where? You know, like if the more of us that engage with it, or at least engage with publicize through the forum, the more we have a place where people can access information that we need. Because that's one thing that we always say, oh, I didn't know so and so is this artist in this Sheffield. So and so was happening here. And I was speaking to one of the most amazing dancers that the African continent has produced here in Sheffield, Angelina Abel. And Angelina has got this Mamawe festival, and I couldn't tell that was different from the usual Mulembast Africa stuff, choreography she does. But I think it's things like that where you can actually see the different things. So I think it's doing what it needs to do. I would feel, because we always talk about that. When you talked about the poetry competition, I was starting to think, and you're talking about judging. What sort of structure does the African Heritage Culture Forum have? Do you have trustees? How does it work?
So as a registered charity, we have trustees, and the trustees are responsible for governance. Obviously, we are regulated. We're a member of the fundraising regulator as well.
Good.
So yes, the forms to be completed, boxes to be ticked.
Admin,
accounts to be submitted. So it's quite a responsibility, because you are legally accountable. We don't get paid. We are volunteers, and we obviously operate through small grants that we've received from Arts Council England and the council, and then donations. We are supported, Sheffield Theatres, also community organisations like Sadaka as well have been very generous in supporting us as well.
Yeah.
And then there's the steering group, which got young people as well in that. But some of the people are coming with their lived experience. They've been really leaders of the city as well. So to have them as part of the steering group, it just gives us that assurance, isn't it? That they're part of it.
And you're right, the ambassadors do play an important role, because yes, you have the trustees, and we will be looking to take on board additional trustees as well with different skills. So you start off with a minimum of 3, and we're looking to get up to about 7. And that is the plan over the next 2 years. But our ambassadors have been just superb in spreading the message, helping. So for Windrush and Black History Month, we would do storyboards that we would host in the Winter Garden. And so as people are walking through, they can read about Black history. And not just, it doesn't start at Windrush. So it goes all the way back, pre-Roman times. I think we talk about Cheddar Man and people, so we take it for granted, but the people saying, Cheddar Man?
Cheddar Man.
Who's Cheddar Man? and people were really, really surprised. You know, we talked about when we were kings and queens and had empires.
Yeah.
These stories you take for granted, but many people don't know them.
Don't know them, yeah.
So it's wonderful as you walk through. You need to take 10 minutes. And you can see people walk through and they stop and they start reading. So we want to, those information boards are in so much demand. So one of the major projects we will be doing is fundraising, is to get those boards printed up so we can have 5 copies, as it were. And then we can loan them out to schools.
That's right.
Sheffield Cathedral also display them as well. So lots of different places.
Those are quite strategic.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I go a bit more into the learning resources and the partnerships that you have? So, I mean, Learn Sheffield is great, and now you're pointing out the cathedral. How do you tailor your services and resources? So the learning packs, Black History Month Learning Resources Pack, Windrush Day, you've done all that in this space of time to the schools and families, youth, and especially that you're seeing on the ground as far as paid staff are concerned. Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, I forgot to mention the universities. So we had a fabulous intern through University of Sheffield, and also Hallam supported us with producing some banners for Windrush, which we can use every year. So we've had great support from the universities, and when we had the intern, it allowed us to tailor the learning resources pack.
Right.
So the packs are structured for each of the key stages: primary, middle school and secondary. And we also identify resources that can be used by parents and caregivers, guardians, or whether it can be used within the school, or indeed by the children themselves.
Right.
Some of it is tailored projects, some of them are films that they can watch. And what we do, we haven't produced any of this. We basically curated it. So this is information that's already out there, but we've just gone through it. We've picked out what we thought was the best, and then we brought it all together with links. And so you don't need to go looking for it. And I think one of the teachers said, this is fantastic. It's all in one place. And each year we go through, we refresh, we check the links, because some material goes out of date, or you get new material coming, we think, oh, this is good, and we just refresh it and then send it out.
Okay. How do you envision? So let's say I'm part of a family. I've got my children myself. How does family use that resource? How do you see that playing out?
Because we are not educators, we took the decision to route it via Learn Sheffield, and then they share it via the teachers. So it always goes through educators. I think that's important because they also have a link with the child and with the parent. So what we don't want to do is to cut across or give mixed messages. I think it's important that they hear these stories, they go through the process through the educational setting.
Yeah.
And of course parents who register with the forum, they can access the materials as well. So if you're a member and you want to do, if you're educating at home, then they can also access those resources. We don't actively promote it, but it's there. But we tend to do it predominantly via the educators, so they can set the context, because children will ask other questions that maybe a parent can't answer, but an educator, a trained educator can.
And if we were to have an educator part of it, then it'd be somebody who gets paid, and we don't have the funding to employ somebody who would deliver it to schools. And that's another restriction of funding, to be fair.
And we've sometimes gone out and supported assemblies, school assemblies. I did that just before Christmas. And actually that was one of the schools
you go back to school.
Lots of poetry entry, so it does work.
I'm about to do one as well
And
next
to
go back to school.
And we don't charge.
It's for a young group of young people, and majority of them actually are non-African heritage. Because that's why we're saying that we need to prepare the next generations of our city to kind of learn early. So that they can be the teachers in those classes who
like
can deliver.
normalize the normal, because so why is it not being normalized?
If we can't start from very young grassroots, then where do we start?
And it's important that these stories are shared to all children.
Yes.
It's not just for our community. In fact, most of the recipients, I would say, are not African heritage.
Yeah.
But they're the ones who need to
learn.
understand.
Yeah. And there's a synchronicity, I think, from what you've said about if it goes through the learning system. So apart from the fact that that the capacity is limited financially, but maybe there's also a big advantage to the fact that when it goes through the school system, even when parents access something on the forum, they will be at least they'll be doing that with the knowledge that actually the school system also has it, and so when they're engaging with children, at least it's there, and teachers won't be caught by surprise either. And they can, because the teachers do have a very close relationship with the children, because they spend more time with them. So that's
and some teachers are very passionate in this space, and they will email us and say, "Are you able to come in? Can you refer?" So we do sometimes make introductions to people who are educators, and then they can receive a fee. But we don't get involved in that process. We just provide names and contacts and to take that forward independently.
Which complements the already materials that they teach about African heritage, or children would be coming home talking about, Harry Hubman and all of these, Harriet and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. But this material also makes it more British sometimes.
It brings it back home to where they are, where the existence is.
So because they're learning globally, but also they can relate to it if you were talking about
from a local lens, a British lens. Right. I think that's great work that you're doing with that. What recent events or initiatives have generated the most positive feedback, and why do you think they have resonated strongly?
I would say the one that springs to mind is the Caribbean footsteps. Is it footsteps or footprint? I always get it wrong. It's footsteps, not footprints. Footsteps. Western Park National Museums. And I remembered when that launched, which was last year, actually, around this time last year.
Yeah, I took the kids.
And people came from London, Leeds, Manchester. In fact, somebody came from abroad. Well, I think he's based in the UK, but he actually travelled back early.
For Caribbean Footsteps.
Caribbean Footsteps.
What is Caribbean Footsteps?
So you need to go and see it.
Yeah.
It's at the museum. It's there till 2027. And we talked about the Windrush stories and our elders, but it captures their stories of Sheffielders of African heritage.
Local.
And it's captured, it's a local story. And you go into a room, and Western Park is a beautiful museum, and it's an enormous room, and you get to hear, see, and experience,
as well,
listen.
the music.
You can hear the voices, you can hear the music.
And these are local Sheffield.
Yes.
Was this worked on by Danae Wellington? Is that something totally different?
There have been a host of people who supported it.
Yes.
You have Danae, Desiree, Ursula, Clinton.
I'm loving the plethora of the community there.
Because we are in Sheffield, we are a really important melting pot of groups of people who 10 years ago we didn't have this. We didn't have the Dig Where You Stand. We didn't have our young poets. We didn't have this, channel. And now we're in a good place where we need to just keep going with it, actually, and get better.
And we mustn't take it for granted.
Yeah,
because I always say, well, what was there before? And there are people who come from other cities and say, this is fantastic, we don't have this.
Right.
Yeah.
So we think it's a start. And I always keep saying, we can't rest on our laurels, and we're not done yet. And after 2027, it would be a shame if those stories suddenly went back into the archive. So, the next thing we need to start thinking about is there a place where we can have this permanently? And then share
so
these stories.
this goes out pretty soon then.
It'll be there till 2027.
Yeah.
Because obviously exhibitions, they're there for a year or two.
Yeah.
And then they have to create space for a new exhibition, but what we're thinking is, can we find a home for this exhibition? So it will always be there. You would obviously refresh it, but that's where we're talking to Sheffield Museums and looking ahead to the future.
And I suppose for something like that, again, it's the audience. It's not necessarily that it should be limited to African heritage communities, but actually it's more informative to those that are not, if anything, and so that's why I would want to to do that. Okay, thank you. I love that. And on the race equality, so what's the evolution of the Race Equality Commission now? Where is it, and how is there still a role for the African now that you've got the African Heritage Culture Forum?
So I think that's a really good question. So obviously the Commission published its recommendations in 2022, and then the city set up the Race Equality Partnership Sheffield, and we were on the panel shortlisting the chair, so we have an independent chair. Lady called Fatima Khan Shah, and she is in post.
When did that happen?
That was last September.
Yeah,
last year September.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know, she's doing sterling work behind the scenes, getting out and that. And I would like to think that we'll probably get a progress update from the key organisations, the council, South Yorkshire Police, the universities, Sheffield Teaching Hospitals, the large employers in the city.
Yes,
they are all working on their action plans.
Okay.
I think we had a progress update, was that 2 years ago at Pond Sport? I lose track of time now, but they are all...
That was the launch.
But that was
that was last year, wasn't
launch.
it? Has it been 2 years already?
It will be, I think,
somewhere there.
this November it will be, so it's about 18 months.
Yeah, right.
So I think we're due another update.
All right, okay.
But I sense that...
How do you feel about the progress then, both of you? Like, what do you think? Any thoughts?
Well, each of these organizations are carrying on what they promised to do. So, for example, Sheffield Teaching Hospitals, NHS Foundation, South Yorkshire Police, because I'm the co-chair of the Race Action Plan for for South Yorkshire Police, but while these organisations who signed up to be the partners are carrying on, I think what's slowed down is what the legacy would have done. So we've kind of been waiting what's going to happen now. But I think they need to regroup and
I think there's some confidence because we sit.
Yeah.
And maybe we
in
have
different places.
In different places.
Right.
So I'm a non-exec at Sheffield Teaching Hospital, so I know what they're doing in terms of their DI plan.
Congratulations, I actually heard that. That's quite recent, isn't it?
I started in November, but I was also a trustee for a cancer charity as well. So health inequalities is something that's I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And obviously we support South Yorkshire Police and their Race Action Plan.
Right.
And we sit on various committees with Sheffield City Council, so we know the work that the council is doing within its own organisation. So as Kaltum said, the people are doing lots of things, but I think people, maybe the general public, aren't always aware of that.
So the socialization of what's happening hasn't yet taken place. Whilst things are happening, but it hasn't. These things are not yet being socialized.
Yeah.
The body of the legacy that took on the responsibility of
that's reps, isn't it?
The reps need to really highlight what's been done in the 36 months. Or in the 24 months.
I think they are working on that.
It's coming along
It's a
somewhere.
big piece of work.
It is. Okay.
And again, Fatima Khan Shah is, she's a volunteer community representative.
Yeah.
So she has a lot to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Another person to talk to. I think.
Okay, we will speak to Fatima. Yeah. So, what are the future plans? What are the key projects of the forum for the next 12 months, if that's possible?
So we need to get the stories. We talked about the storyboards that we work with Clinton McCoy and Leroy and others to bring those stories together. And we want to take those boards on to the next level. So fingers crossed, I think we're going to get another intern from University of Sheffield.
Okay.
We behave ourselves and we're hoping to get some funding. So we'd like to get, because there's a real demand for the boards and to tell those stories. So if we can get the boards printed up and available, and then we can share them. Because at the moment we only have one set of boards and you have to put them up and then take them back down.
Right.
And they're showing their age now, they're looking a bit worn. So we want to get them printed up and get maybe 5 copies that we can then take around to different organisations. So that's our priority, and to have a version for Windrush and a version for Black History Month. The poetry competition, obviously, Windrush is coming the 22nd of June. It's Windrush Day.
Who are the judges for that? So there's you, and who else?
Oh my goodness! So the judging panel included Des Smith, who was
Okay.
voted.
Oh,
So you know
yes.
Des Smith,
Yeah,
Deputy Lieutenant,
yes,
and was given the freedom of the city.
yeah. So yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
So
Yeah.
Des was one of our judges. Silly as well.
Celestine, oh yeah,
Yes.
natural
Yeah.
poet
Yes,
anyway.
natural
Yeah.
poet.
Apart from a
Yeah.
presenter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Danae Wellington, our poet
Oh,
laureate.
poet laureate.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
And
Danae still the poet laureate, or has that
I
changed
think
now?
they passed a bit.
They passed it on.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
but
she
that's
passed
ours.
it to
Yeah.
another young person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were obviously part of the judging panel, and then
Great.
Sheffield as well.
That's
So,
amazing.
Yeah,
What-
and the UK Poetry Society.
Amazing.
Yes.
This is going to be good. Poetry is
It's going to
where
be fabulous.
poetry is was my actual entry point into the
Was it?
cultural
wow.
space of Sheffield,
Wait,
actually.
so we're hoping to get
But I
some of
haven't
them
been good with
published.
it.
And when you see them, you will
I will
be
love them.
amazed.
I will
Amazing.
definitely love them. Yeah. And Kaltum, what are you thinking is probably something you would like to see the forum do in the next 12 months? Sorry.
I think we need to bring other communities to the ownership. I think Sonia and I always talk about we've got new communities. Our city is changing.
Yeah.
There are new communities of African heritage
Yeah.
in the city, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, different places. So we need to actually try and see how we can connect them to that, so they can tell their stories, work with Migration Matters maybe,
Okay.
work with other organizations who are doing that instead of kind of replicating, but kind of connecting those communities to this heritage, so they can be part of it and tell their stories as well. So that's something to look forward to in the future, but with resources and with people. People
Yeah.
are resources.
Yeah.
So the more young people that we get also to get involved as apprenticeships or work experiences, I think that might be something we can think about to do, and then they'll see themselves in getting involved. And there are migrant communities for African heritage who would love to see those boards and kind of understand what the journey of the Windrush generation.
Yeah.
And there's that separation, so it would be nice to breach that and kind of show them their ownership of their heritage that have contributed to this country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's really powerful, because you and I sit on so many strategic committees and boards, and at Sheffield, I mentioned the Sheffield City goals and
Yeah.
the aims and aspirations of Sheffield and where the city wants to be by 2035. And we recently published the Sheffield Culture Strategy,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which was fantastic. And it identified through the cultural audit where the gaps were, and it talked about audience participation, diversity of the offering. And we were sat at the table when those discussions were ongoing. So
That's good,
we
yeah.
had input into that strategy.
Yeah, and you've also now had a cultural manager at the Sheffield City Council, which we didn't have before.
Yeah.
So as a result of those conversations,
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's getting to that time when we have to say bye to each other. But can I just say thank you so much? There's so much we could talk about,
I
because
know.
you both do phenomenal work in your individual capacities in the city. So thank you for that.
Thank you
as
for
well.
Thank you
inviting
for
us.
having us.
It's
Thank
been
you.
lovely.
Lovely. So that was the African Heritage Cultural Forum. Joining me on African Voices platform, my name is Chiwe Chahana. Thank you.